Costco is offering fertility treatments, and Kristi Noem is out as DHS secretary. But we may have an MMA fighter in. It's been a semi-good week. Welcome back to Mamarchy. We're your hosts, Tanya and Sarah. Sarah, how are we doing this week?
We are hanging in. As Tanya knows, my daughter was sick yet again yesterday with runny poops. I asked our daycare to start sending photos of the runny poops because she has had these runny poops for 2 months. So are they runny poops? Are they soft poops? Are they diarrhea? I would like to understand it a little bit more, not placing blame, but yeah, out with a sick kid again. My kids don't have school on Friday, so it's a struggle. It's okay. We're in it.
On Friday, is that when they have the family time or kid time at the rec center?
Yes, they do. So I'm going to be actually, I will be bringing my daughter to that, but my son has ski practice in the morning.
Oh, yeah. That's exciting.
Yes.
Shai just started snowboarding, well, quote unquote snowboarding last Sunday. We got the boots on her and pulled her around on a little board with a rope as she cried.
So she didn't love it. What did she not like? Was it the boots or was it the being kind of sideways?
I think that she likes the activity a lot itself. It was more so, it was something new, and that was what was uncomfortable. We tried ski boots first, and she just absolutely hated those, and so that's why we switched to the snowboarding boots. Sorry to anybody not in Colorado that this is probably boring, but snowboarding boots are more comfortable than ski boots. So we'll see. We're going back on Sunday. It's an indoor place called Shredders.
Oh, that's so fun.
This is years 1 through 3, I think. And so Shai's not the youngest one in her class.
That's so fun.
Yeah, there's a 14-month-old that's just standing up on the board and going down it's nothing. It's crazy to watch.
That is so cool that they have that. We would definitely do that if we lived in Denver. We have had Teddy on some sort of ski since he was 1, and now he's a little ripper. But I can totally attest, and I feel like I can say this because I have been a lifelong skier. Ski boots are so uncomfortable. So as a toddler, I'm with you, Shai. They're just, yeah, they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
A means to an end.
I know. And instead of being stick it out, we were like, you can give up. Try these other boots.
It's just the act of doing it. That's good.
Yeah. Anyways, in terms of pop culture, Oscars are this weekend. We know that this episode is going to come out after the fact, and I don't think I've seen any movies that are nominated. Have you?
I have not seen all of them, but I have seen a few. I have seen Marty Supreme with Timothée Chalamet, and I thought it was an excellent movie. I have not seen Sinners, which has Michael B. Jordan.
Oh, I saw that.
Was it scary? Because
I don't think so.
Dylan keeps saying it's a scary movie, and so I'm I'm not into scary movies, but I feel like I should watch it before the Oscars.
I really liked it. I do like scary movies, but I don't think that it's more interesting and kind of what is going on than actually scary.
Okay. Thriller.
The plot is, yeah. Kind of like a thriller.
Okay. I think maybe I will give it a chance. But what I have been hearing is that it's Timmy versus Michael B. Jordan. So I personally would love Michael B. Jordan to win. Timothée Chalamet, I also love Timothy, but he's already won Best Actor. So let's give it to Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah, I love Timothée Chalamet, but I'm not happy with him. One, mostly because of his dating Kylie.
Oh, yeah. The comments.
Yeah, and then his comments with Matthew McConaughey saying that nobody enjoys the opera or ballet or anything anymore. And not I'm a huge opera or ballet person, but that was just so unnecessary.
Honestly, such a good hot take, Tanya. I take back everything I said, even though I want Michael B. Jordan to win Best Actor. I agree. Those comments, not okay.
And there's a new dating show. I also haven't seen this, Age of Attraction. What is it?
It starts today on Netflix. It's hosted by Nick Viall you probably know him from the Bachelor franchise and the Viall Files. I think him and his wife are hosting it. And it's basically like Love is Blind, but people don't know each other's ages. So It looks like very heavily produced. The Love is Blind reunion is tonight too. I was very disappointed when I sat down on my couch last night and I was like, I have to wait one more day. And now, of course, this episode will come out a few weeks after the fact, but very excited. A few new things going on. I know we've talked about Mormon Wives. That comes out on Thursday. Just so much. I'm just excited for some like bad reality TV back in my life.
I am excited now too because I didn't know about that, and we were just talking about how, like, we need something like that.
Oh, you and Jason should start watching Age of Attraction. Then we can talk about it.
Perfect, we will. And exciting news, Costco has partnered with healthcare marketplace Sesame and a major fertility network to offer members affordable, comprehensive fertility services, including IVF, IUI, and up to 80% off specialized medications. This is incredible.
It truly, truly is. First of all, this is like a good example of corporate America doing it right. We've talked about Costco a few times on the pod. They are amazing. For those of you just tuning in for the first time or maybe missed this episode, we did a little bit of a deep dive and a bravo applause for them when they sued the Trump administration for tariffs. So they're just great. We love Costco. This is also just amazing. Like 80% off. Like that's crazy. That is so crazy. I read that most of these now the like clinics or the network of clinics that Costco's partnering with are located within 25 miles of a Costco warehouse. So they're literally all over the country. So it's not like one of those things where it sounds really good and then in practice it's going to be really challenging to go and to get the treatment. So this is really, I mean, life-changing for many families.
Yeah. Hopefully, this sets a precedent or at least spurs more companies to look at this because, as we've talked about it before, like, this isn't just healthcare and like women's care isn't just healthcare. It's good for the economy. Like, this is all stuff that is really important to bring into our lives from health to economy to like social situations. It's just, it doesn't just stop at getting any sort of fertility treatment. So thanks, Costco.
Thanks, Costco.
So, Sarah, what are our political updates for the week?
You had an interesting it's just been interesting. There's been a lot going on in the news. We can't even scratch the surface of what's happening. And in short, we know that when this pod comes out, there will be a whole host of other things happening. But recently, DHS, Department of Homeland Security's Cabinet Secretary Kristi Noem, was fired by Donald Trump. Supposedly, it was because of her $200 million ad that she did. And it was basically like of herself riding a horse, talking about like why we need to get undocumented people out of the country. It was quite bizarre, but apparently Trump didn't sign off on it. So, of all the reasons this woman could have been fired, this was the last straw.
It's the horse ad. Yeah. It's the year of the horse. Thanks, horses. It's just the ad itself is so funny. Go take a look at it. You'll be like, why is this even happening here?
The crazy thing about Kristi Noem getting fired is we all were like, yay, Kristi Noem got fired. And then like 5 minutes later, I'm getting like alerts on my phone about Markwayne Mullen, who is a U.S. Senator from Oklahoma, that supposedly is going to be like, I mean, he'll have to testify in front of Congress and like do their quote unquote interview, and the Senate will have to, prove him to be the next cabinet secretary. But he's the one that Donald Trump has tapped. He literally is a former MMA fighter, and he's made headlines a few times, not for good things, but a few years ago when there was a union leader testifying in front of Congress, he literally was like threatening the guy and saying like, you get your butt up and like come fight me, and like gets up and starts kind of like moving his ring around like he's going to take his ring off and start like beating the guy up. I mean, I'm not a huge Bernie Sanders fan, as people know, but like Bernie Sanders was like, you're a U.S. Senator, sit your ass down. It was wild. So this guy, I mean, come on, ICE, like this guy is going to be in charge of ICE. Like he has anger management problems.
Oh, yeah. And I don't know if you've looked, Sarah recorded a reaction video to it, and it's on our YouTube, and I think that it's on our Instagram at Mamarchy Podcast. But there was a comment on there that was like, classic liberals, always taking things out of context. And my response was just, in what context? Like, how did we didn't just extract this from an okay scenario. There's no reason why this man should have reacted that way, let alone in this hearing with union members where everybody is just pretty calm.
Yeah, it was wild. Like, I remember this going viral, and when I saw the Mark Wade Mullen, I was like, "Who is that?" And with, like, a quick Google, that's, like, the first video that comes up. Like, this is what this guy is known for. Like, he is just yeah, he needs to go to figure out his anger management.
100%. 100%. And then really crazy and very sad story out of Texas, the Republican Congressman Tony Gonzales, who is currently being primaried and has dropped out. He is no longer seeking reelection, but he refuses to resign after a staffer of his who he had an affair with died by suicide. And so he's not running for reelection. There's a lot of speculation as to whether this was a consensual relationship, what was surrounding it, whether or not he pressured her into sending explicit photos. There's just so much stuff that clearly points to obviously him being the monster in this situation and ended ultimately in her death. And I think that his quote on it was like, I asked God for forgiveness and he forgave me. Like, it's just insanity. And this man is married. I believe he has children. It's absurd.
Yeah, there's something about the Christian like nationalism, the rise of Christian nationalism and the rise of the right, where it's like, it's okay. God has forgiven me. So what I am doing, what I have said is fine. Like, I just have major problems with that. Like, I'm all for people like practicing whatever religion that they choose to practice, but like when you are using it as a reason to like validate bad things that you have done in your life, it just feels icky. Like that doesn't to me, and I was raised Catholic. So like that just doesn't feel right at all in any way. And this man has children and is married and like just fucking resign. Like you're being primaried. Like no one wants you in the seat anymore. Goodbye. Like go figure out your life. Like go, I don't know, whatever. I just am so disgusted by these members of Congress that like do these horrific things and then just like, thank God he's not running for reelection, but like, you don't deserve to be there.
No, he doesn't deserve to be there. And the story isn't even on the victim, right? So Regina Santos Aviles, she set herself on fire. And that's something that like is so painful and terrible.
Awful.
There needs to be more of a focus on the victim and why that happened
Agreed.
and less of oh, like, can Gonzales, like, figure out his public image? Like, you're right. Get out of office. You don't deserve to be there. Probably figure shit out with your family, but also, like, it needs to be investigated what happened because this woman was that desperate, and that's just so tragic.
It's gross. Okay. Well, very, very sad news. But something that, like, I know, Tanya, you were like, why aren't more people talking about this? Like, this woman is a victim. Like, and she should be remembered for all of the good things that I'm sure she offered and did in this world. And she was she was a staffer. She was like a young staffer. Like, that's hard, really hard. We've both been there. But that's why we wanted to talk about it today, because we think more people should know about these things that our elected officials are doing. Okay, so, well, in this episode of Pardon My Reaction, we have 2 clips that we wanted to react to. Both of them are ridiculous in their own way.
We're going to ask Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks, show us the safety data that show that it's okay for a teenage girl to drink an iced coffee with 115 grams of sugar in it. I don't think they're going to be able to do it.
His voice will never stop being just
Jarring.
wow, jarring, just very jarring when giving medical advice. And somebody posted another reaction video of this, and somebody commented like, this man started heroin off of a toilet seat, and this is like what he's going after. And like, obviously, we talked about like sugar. There should be a tax on sugar. There should be something in order to help mitigate the amount that is being consumed by young Americans or just Americans in general. Good God. But like, that's not, you know, that's not its place.
Well, and you know who did this originally was Michelle Obama when she was first lady, and she had her national Let's Move campaign. And there was a reason why when you go to Dunkin' Donuts or you go to Starbucks, you have the caloric, the caloric number for your drink or the food that you're ordering. It's like on the menu. That was her, and she was like the worst person in the world. Like, oh my God, she's attacking, all the food that we love. And now RFK gets up there and is like, well, young girls shouldn't be drinking their sugary ice lattes, which I personally take offense to because as Tanya said, we've been doing these reaction videos on our social accounts. So thank you for following us there. And if you don't follow us there, and the reactions from the reactions are just like outrageous. It's like, come on, guys. Like, you, as in the Republicans, are all about freedom and all about doing what you want, right? Like, I want to be able to have my gun and eat my fucking Big Mac at the same time. But they want to control what I put in my body and like who I marry and if I can have an abortion or not. It's like kind of outrageous. Like RFK, it's like, go away.
He's a very confusing person.
It's
Okay.
very confusing. It's very confusing.
All right. And then our second video here is Hillary Clinton reacting to Lauren Boebert, who took a photo of her during a closed testimony on the Epstein hearing. So for those that don't know, you're not allowed to take photos, record anything like that in there. And God bless our congresswoman from Colorado, Lauren Boebert, took a photo and sent it to a conservative blogger. Was just like, Lauren, she just one gaffe after another. Like,
Also, at the request of the Republicans, the reason why it wasn't a public hearing is because the Republican administration didn't want it to be public. Hillary and Bill were like, I'm good. Like, anyway, let's watch the clip because it's just, yeah.
all right, here we go. It's so classic, incredible Hillary, the way that she reacted to this.
Excuse me, can I interrupt?
I have
There are
another.
photos that are being released of the secretary as she is testifying from inside this room. Can you please advise me as to whether or not that's permissible and consistent with the rules, particularly given that we have asked for a public hearing? If there are photos that are being released of the secretary as she is testifying, can you please explain how that
I'm
can
done
occur?
with this. If you guys are doing that, I am done. You can hold me in contempt from now until the cows come home. This is just typical behavior.
We will go off the record.
Oh, for heaven's
So I would like
sake.
to understand.
She's such a boss.
I know.
She's such a boss. Her body language, too. For those of you who are listening, like, go watch the YouTube because it's so you can see the video. She's amazing.
She is amazing. So thanks, Hillary Clinton, for giving us that.
Yeah. And Tanya, didn't you, I think you read that Hillary and Bill brought like toys for Lauren Boebert's grandson who she was traveling with, and like they didn't even touch them. Like they were being kind and being like, oh, like she has to travel with her great grandson. I think it's her great grandson.
I think it's her grandson. Lauren just has a grandson.
Maybe you're right. She had her kids in the fucking back of her car when she was 16 years old. So I can't like keep track.
That's true. That's true. But she is a grandmother. Yes.
She's a grandmother. Okay.
So enough about her because it's Women's History Month and we have a really exciting person to highlight this month. And so we are highlighting Dr. Rebecca Lee Crumpler. She was the first Black woman physician in the United States, and she graduated from medical school in 1864, which is just crazy because the Civil War is still happening at this point. So Civil War is going on. Black people are still slaves in the South, and this woman is graduating from medical school. So most doctors at this point are still even wondering, like, if washing hands is important or if that's just a bunch of, like, hoopla.
Yeah, this is such an incredible story. Rebecca originally worked as a nurse in Massachusetts, but she kept getting encouraged by doctors, presumably mostly men that she worked with, to pursue medicine further. So this was incredibly rare, obviously, at this time at all, for any woman to be practicing medicine, for any Black person to be practicing medicine. So it was pretty amazing that she just kind of pushed through because she just loved it. She was passionate about helping people.
And so the first thing that she did after graduating, which again, like cannot say enough things about this remarkable person, is this is right after the Civil War. She was treating formerly enslaved people who had no access to health care. So that's like the most needy of the needy and most deserving population of people to get this health care. And like, of course, it's a Black woman who is stepping up and doing this work. And so she also worked with the Freedmen's Bureau and focused mostly on women and children. And so she was doing maternal and pediatric care in some of the hardest conditions imaginable.
So she, as you can all assume, she faced constant discrimination for being a woman, for being a Black woman. White doctors mocked her. Pharmacists sometimes refused to fill prescriptions that she would write. And many patients had never actually seen a Black doctor before. But nevertheless, she persisted. So later, she wrote a book called A Book of Medical Discourses in 1883. So not only did this woman go to medical school, practice medicine, but then she wrote a book. Like, this person is a superhero. But this was one of the first medical texts ever written by a Black physician in America and focused heavily on women's health and childcare advice for mothers.
Which right now women get enough pressure and lack of advice for childcare and everything like that. So cannot imagine what it was like in 1883 when Dr. Crumpler was writing this book trying to help these women and these people. So while the country was still figuring itself out if women should be allowed to practice medicine, allowed to do anything, because they couldn't vote at this point. Like, they couldn't have a credit card, not until the 70s, at least without a man's approval. Dr. Rebecca Lee Crumpler was writing guides to help moms and keep their kids healthy. So thank you, Dr. Crumpler, out there. We recognize your work and hope that you remember the story about an incredible woman.
Yeah, this was a good one. Okay, so today we're joined by Sondra Goldschein, the executive director of the Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy, an organization fighting to reshape our economy so that it actually works for families. She's been a longtime advocate, former deputy national political director for the ACLU. She brings both professional expertise and personal caregiving experience to her work, ensuring all families have the support they need to thrive.
So Sandra has spent her career at the intersection of policy, advocacy, and organizing, pushing for the things that should be no-brainers, but somehow are not no-brainers, like paid family leave, affordable childcare, economic policies that don't punish people for having kids.
So she is extremely sharp, extremely passionate. She's someone who's figured out how to fight like hell for families while also being part of one. She is a mom of two. She's in the thick of raising humans while navigating the chaos of the news, like us all, both at home and at work. So we're just so thrilled to have her on the show today. So grab your Dunkin' iced coffee, your Starbucks latte, RFK Jr., your LaCroix, your tap water, and let's get into it.
Hi, Sandra. Welcome to the show. Before we get into it, we wanted to ask you a few rapid fire questions to get to know you a little bit better outside of the political engagement realm. Are you ready?
Yes, I am, and it's great to be here. Hi, Sarah and Tanya.
Okay. What did you want to be as a kid?
I wanted to be a lawyer. I went to law school. I practiced for 15 months. I am not a lawyer anymore.
Fair. I hear that from a lot of lawyers. Wine, beer, or CBD gummy?
You know, it's actually none of the above. When I want to relax, I like to eat chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, that's a good answer.
That is good. That's so wholesome, too. Going to a movie, paying $20 on demand, or waiting for it to be free?
100% going to a movie, but if I miss it, because I feel like movies aren't in the theaters for very long anymore, I will not pay for it. I'm going to wait for it to come online for free.
And how do you describe your job to your kids, or like, what do your kids think you do for a living?
They still think that I basically talk on Zoom for a living. When I push them on it, though, they think that I work in a job that helps kids and families.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. And what are you binging on TV currently?
Oh, I'm watching Love Story.
Oh, yes.
Chocolate. Maybe Carolyn Bessette and John F. Kennedy Jr.
Oh, that I wanna watch it. It's good?
It's good. I think it's good. I think it's truthy. Like, I would say you should watch it. You can read the Daryl Hannah op-ed from the New York Times.
Very spicy.
Yeah, and then Instagram is feeding like a lot of like 90s Calvin Klein-ness right now. So it's all over, and it has helped me break my heated rivalry addiction.
Finally, something.
I don't think we have gone an episode without heated rivalry not coming up. We have talked about it every single episode. We did a play-by-play, and now we have just been talking about it for literally for months.
Okay, so I did the 3-time watch. It was a surprise to me when I started watching it. I did not know what it was going to be about. And like, this has kind of gotten me out of it. And there are people chatting about it. So if you're looking for an exit ramp, this may be one of them.
Yes. Love Story is great TV, but I've read the Daryl Hall kind of expose comments, and very interesting.
Yeah.
I will say it's not a documentary. Like, it's not a documentary. It is fiction based on true life. But yeah, so for our listeners,
it's a good memory. Like, I was studying for the bar, going back to being a lawyer when the plane crashed, and he was very much on everyone's mind. Took him 3 times to pass it, and there are parts of it that are true, but yeah, no, it's more of a vibe. I feel like than than fact than a documentary, as you
the
said.
vibe. And the one other thing to note on that is we did an episode about the 90s, and it does feel like the 90s are very much coming back into style per your Instagram feed.
Yes,
And so we're excited about it.
I am too.
We are like, bring back the 90s. We're here for it.
We are. We just quickly on that. So we're rewatching Seinfeld right now, Sondra, me and my husband.
Oh,
And last night I was like, I could see myself wearing both Jerry and George's outfits, which is very interesting. It's just like
interesting.
these printed long sleeves tucked into jeans that like mom jeans. I am basically like that SNL skit about mom jeans that comes out, but great style.
That is a hot take. Like, that is a hot take. I don't think I've ever heard anyone in the history of talking about Seinfeld, like, talk about wearing their clothing. And now that you're saying it, like, that's totally they have belts too, because I feel like you need.
They do not. They
But you'll-
don't. That's missing. But
Okay.
that's a 2026 upgrade.
Okay.
Seinfeld upgrade.
I love it. I'm going to have to go back and watch it and see if I too would do that.
Okay, last question. What is the best part of working from home and the worst part of working from home?
Oh, for me, that is the same thing. It's being home when your kids come home from school. It is a joy that they are there, and it drives me nuts that they are there. So it's I work from home, and I'm so happy to be there when they're home, and sometimes it just messes up work.
That is very fair. Well, thank you for going through that stuff with us. We like to start out a little on a lighter note, and we appreciate it. So we're going to start with our first segment, Make It Make Sense. And we want to spend time with you breaking this down for our listeners, because family-friendly economy sounds like something everybody should agree on, that it should be the number one thing we are focused on and striving for. And yet here we are.
Yeah.
So we're going to have you, if you can, make it make sense for our listeners, starting with paid family leave. Paid family leave is still not guaranteed federally. We're one of the only wealthy nations without it. Why and who benefits from keeping it that way?
Oh, that's a great question. So we, right now, whether you have paid family leave, which allows you to not lose a paycheck when you have to take off time to care for yourself or your loved ones, including a newborn, but not limited to that. It depends on what state you live in, right? Like, you could live in a state that has paid family leave, or you could live in a state that doesn't have paid medical leave. And that's because there is no law, Congress has passed no law mandating that everyone, all Americans, are entitled to have that. And I think when something deeply impacts working people like this does, you have to always ask, like, whose bottom line is benefiting from keeping those families from achieving greater financial security. And so, when you think about the special interests that lobby in Congress, you often hear that it's big business that is trying to keep these laws from passing. But, we talk with business owners all the time, especially like small business owners in a lot of the organizing work that we do in states across the country. And we hear that these owners are very much looking for a solution that supports themselves and their employees, because they see, like we do, that it's an investment, like in your workforce, not a cost. So people who have paid leave are less likely to leave, right? So that leads to less employee turnover. It improves morale. It improves productivity. It attracts talent. And so it is a value add to an employer. So we see these arguments in Washington, represented by special interests, which just don't line up to the reality of most business owners across the country. So I think that that's like a big part of why we haven't seen it pass just yet.
That's great. And I think so helpful to kind of hear your perspective on it. I think as moms and our listeners, most of them are parents. It is hard to make sense of. And I want to get into childcare costs too. But before that, can you just take us back a little bit and talk about what is the Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy? Like, what do you do? Who are you fighting for?
So the Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy is an organization. We've been around for 10 years, and we are fighting for a future where all people can afford to take care of themselves and their loved ones.
That's great. An amazing elevator pitch, by the way.
Thank you. I've been leading the organization for 4 years, and it's both like personal. It's very personal for me as well.
So, could you get into that a little bit with our listeners? I know we did an extended introduction of you and your past work and kind of how you got into this and what you've been fighting for. But when you say it's personal, like, what do you mean by that?
So I am a mom also of 2 kids, and I have really struggled over time with the very high cost of childcare, right? Like when I had a child, it maybe have been naive, but I never thought about that cost, right? Like all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, how am I going to go back to work? But it really goes back to earlier in my career when my mother, unfortunately, was suffering from a rare blood cancer called multiple myeloma. And at the end of her life, she was in the ICU for over a month. And I was very lucky to have a supervisor who just said to me, take the time that you need to help care for her at the end of her life. And I didn't really realize it at the time, but later on when talking to other, friends or colleagues who were in similar situations, I realized it was only like really by luck of that being my employer that I was able to take off the time that I needed to be with my mother, to care for my mother at the end of her life without worrying about losing a paycheck. And that's something that is really unfair and impacts women, right? Like more than anyone else. And most of my career has been about fighting for fairness and fighting for women. And so when the opportunity came to fix that for all Americans, and especially for women of color, right? Like the people who most often find caregiving, right? Like as part of their responsibilities, I jumped at the chance to run an organization that has that as its goal.
Well, thank you for doing this work. We constantly talk about childcare costs. I have 2 kids under the age of 4. Tanya has one under the age of 2. And it is like a constant struggle. I mean, the cost is exorbitant. It's really for us, like, we're working moms and we're privileged in the way that like we have flexible jobs, but it's impossible. The struggle feels impossible. So can you talk a little bit more about those childcare costs? I know you've experienced yourself, but even today, I mean, our listeners have heard me say this all the time. I will scream it from the rooftops, but like I pay $48,000 $58,000 a year for childcare. That's 2 kids in daycare 5 days a week. That is literally more than most people make. So, can you put some real numbers on like what families are actually up against now, the decisions they have to make, and how do we message that? I know from a campaign perspective, like it's all about messaging. Like how do we make sure that people understand like what's happening?
So it is, childcare right now in many states is more expensive than sending your kid to college, right? Like for in-state tuition. And that is something that you plan for many years. It is more expensive in other places, in many places than your mortgage. So it's more expensive than housing costs, which is something again that you plan for many years. And not only is it expensive, but there are childcare deserts in this country. There are places where it's really hard to find high quality, affordable childcare that's close by to you. And those two things together, let alone that like childcare is not a high paying profession. And so it is just like a broken system. It is very expensive to provide. It is very expensive to afford. And that's really why I think like the solution here is for the government to step in and to look at childcare the same way it looks at other pieces of infrastructure, right? Like there are lots of things that exist so people can contribute to the economy, so they can get to work, so they can earn money, right? There are roads and bridges. Like those are things that you don't think people have to solve for themselves. And I feel like childcare should very much be on that list of basic infrastructure. And that's like one way to talk about it. That I think is really helpful. I think another way to talk about childcare that's really important is to think about it as a collective struggle, right? That it is not something that everybody needs to solve individually. I think it was Hillary Clinton, right, that talked about, that repeated a proverb. It's like, it takes a village, right? And it really does take a village. And you don't have to solve this problem for yourself. So I think a really important, avenue for building public support for this collective solution is sharing your experience with other people and talking about it as a challenge that needs a collective solution. I don't know how else, like to say that. It really breaks through, I think, to people when you share your own story about what your struggles are and you start to connect that to investments on the federal level in making childcare affordable, accessible, and a career that we want to attract the best to come into.
Last night, we actually, before bedtime, read Hillary Clinton's book. I think with Chelsea, It Takes a Village. It's a really, really sweet children's book if you haven't read it. Great message for any moms out there. And something that you did hit on that I think we don't acknowledge but is really, really important is how codependent the ecosystem is between parents that need childcare and also people that provide childcare, because there are 1,000 reasons why people shouldn't say, why don't you just stay home and take care of your kid? Why are you working? But if we do that, there are so many people that are out there. Like, if I do that, then our nanny doesn't have a job. And then her, household goes into a separate area. And so it's like this whole thing where we're all really relying on each other, and like somebody should be coming out ahead in this, and it's not us. Like we're just kind of pulling each other trying to get by. So it's really something. And so it should be something where across party lines, we want this. Mothers are Republican, mothers are Democrats, caretakers are Republican, Democrats, fathers, anybody who takes care of grandparents. Why is this not something that is crossing party lines as much?
Yeah. So what's interesting is that it crosses, as you said, it crosses party lines when you talk about constituents, right? Like, and voters, people people who are identifying as a party. When we recently did polling on this agenda, which is done periodically, and the amount of support is like the highest, right? At our poll, it was 94% of people that we polled support policies that address the cost of caregiving. Like you both know, 94%. That is huge. You don't get to that number without crossing party lines, without crossing race, without crossing gender, with age, right? Like you can go on and on. This is an extremely popular policy. And so, we got really close to getting investments across the finish line. If you look back to 2022 and you see that the Build Back Better, right, like Biden's Build Back Better legislation included all of the investments that we're talking about in childcare, in paid leave. What we haven't talked a lot about up to this point is care for the aging and disabled, right? Like we find a lot of people in that sandwich generation caring, moms caring for their parents and their kids, right, like at the same time. And Build Back Better was going to address that. And the House passed that legislation, and it did include, right, all of those policies. But in the final negotiations, it was cut. And that's with a Democratic trifecta, right? Democrats controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House. That was despite it being part of the Democratic agenda that people had run on, despite it being so popular, and despite, it having even passed one of the houses. And I think that that's because this movement of moms, right, like of caregivers, of people who are, support caregivers, didn't yet have the political power that was needed to win. And I think part of, how I would think about that political power is that there weren't people who were in those negotiations that worried about going home to their districts in their states, without having delivered on that. It was not a political necessity to deliver on these policies. And I think that building that political will is what the Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy is all about.
So you kind of answered one of my next question in your answer there, but just going off of that, we talk a lot about like building this political power, right? Of moms, of caregivers, of parents. I mean, you just kind of touched on it where 94% of people in a statewide poll are supportive of these policies, but then when it gets to the actual sausage making of the policies, they don't end up passing. So what could a listener do? And maybe it's like get involved with your organization and, where they can get talking points and information on how to contact their legislators or their congressmen or women. But what do people do? What does political power look like to you?
So I think political power looks like making the public demand for a solution so visible that that candidate and later member of Congress is worried about what's going to happen if they don't deliver. And we do that as an organization in a couple of ways, but that's not sufficient. It is necessary for that demand, for that drumbeat to come from every single corner. We've got to make it, if you think back to, earlier elections, like climate, right? Democrats were really worried about not delivering on climate. And that's because they were hearing about it from every corner. They were hearing about it from people who were donating. They were donating to people's campaigns and saying how important it was to them. They were writing letters to the editor, right? They were having meetings with their members of Congress. They were calling. And then you also had, in addition to that, organizations like ours, and this is what we're going to do to help this cycle and what we've been doing for the last several cycles, is making this an issue that candidates themselves have to organize around. And part of that is we run really big canvassing programs in states across the country and districts, which are the ones that are going to decide who controls Congress. And we talk to people about where candidates stand on these policies that will lower costs and that will make life more affordable, right? This is going to be an affordability election. That's what all the candidates are talking about and paying attention to. And we are making sure that the crisis around the cost of caregiving is front and center in what people are struggling with right now. And those conversations, those one-on-one conversations are super important because our canvassers are trained to connect what we were talking about earlier, the individual challenges that people are facing with the collective solution and what's happening in Washington, D.C. So if somebody says, like you just said, Sarah, it is so expensive, like that's the thing that's top of my mind right now is like, how am I going to afford this for the next, many, many years? Our canvasser is trained to come back and to say, oh, that's, I'd like to tell you, like what where the two candidates stand on addressing that, right? Like candidate A has said nothing about childcare. They're focused on, other issues, but candidate B has a history of sponsoring legislation and voting legislation that invests in, lowering the cost of childcare for people like you. And those conversations are really important. And then when that person goes out and votes for someone and talks about it with their friends and family because they're voting for them because they're going to address a kitchen table economic issue that is super important to them, I think that is how you start making it inevitable.
Yeah. And it's something where we've kind of touched on it during this, and it is very obvious that I never really actually think about it, is the fact that, like, if we did save so much money on childcare, what does that look like in terms of providing funds for a child's education in the future and not having to take out student loans, and then just like the snowball effect that that could have. So just, it's not impacting you right now. It impacts your entire life. It impacts your kid's entire life. So you were talking about your canvassers, and we did mention a few times that, when Dems hear from their donors, when they hear from their voters, that sometimes they get, they listen. Are there any Republicans right now that you're talking to that you think are getting it right, or that are at least like on the path to trying to figure this out?
It's really interesting because this really becomes a partisan issue in ways for people who are elected. But it's, as we said earlier, it's not a partisan issue for people who are voting, right? Like for American families. And so I know you're asking about leaders. I do want to say before I go there that we talk to Republicans all the time, right? Like that's part of our canvassing efforts. They're people who vote Republican and they are interested and demanding the same solutions that we're talking about. There's a translation problem when people are elected and they go to DC. Sometimes they say that they are committed to building a family-friendly economy and supporting families. And they say that they're supportive of paid leave. But when you ask how, that's where things sort of get strange, right? Like I think about Marco Rubio when he was in the Senate. They had this policy idea that he would support paid leave. And the way that you would do it would be to borrow from your Social Security. So that's doesn't make sense, right? Like you shouldn't have to borrow from your Social Security. That's not anything about supporting families' economic security. And so what I find with Republicans, and this is really unfortunate because to create lasting change, you've got to get people to work across the aisle. But it's really hard to find examples in DC of where people are promoting solutions that actually help working families. I think you can find some examples in states across the country, right? Like more so, but they're in DC, there is just this divide between word and action, like what people say they want to do versus what they actually support.
What is so crazy to me is these people that say, oh, well, people need to have more babies and women don't need to work. And, all the talking
Yeah.
points. And it's like, well, you want people to have more kids, maybe provide paid leave for mothers who are growing, delivering, recovering, feeding the child. And even not moms that need to bond with their child, that didn't deliver, but still need to have that opportunity. And then pay for affordable childcare. How could I have more kids when I'm paying $60,000 a year for two? It just doesn't make sense.
I cannot. By the way. Okay.
On the state issue with Republicans, I know that we're based in Colorado. There is a bill running through the state house right now with a Republican who actually owns a childcare facility in rural Colorado and a Democrat who's in Denver. It's not as robust as what just recently happened in Vermont, which you probably saw, which also was a bipartisan bill. And they have now, it's amazing what Vermont is doing with childcare. I mean, it is absolutely amazing. We'll make sure to put a link to the story. I think New York Times did a story on it about a month ago. But I think what's so fascinating to me is you have these bipartisan bills that are successful in states. So those people need to run for office and duplicate what they're doing at the congressional level. But like you said, then people get to Congress and it's they don't it's so weird to me. Like, it's just become so partisan and I don't get it. Like, especially now when childcare and housing and paid leave and all these things are like top of mind. Like, why can't everyone just get on board?
No, and I would love it, right? Like I'm here for the issues, right? Like we want to have majorities in Congress and a person in the White House that gets this. But like just thinking about the lip service to an issue versus the details. Like I just remember when, like there's this quote from Donald Trump being like, yeah, I support childcare. Just like you remember, like just throw some toys in a room and and JD Vance being like, yeah, childcare is a problem. Your grandma and grandpa should help. It's like not, those are not solutions. And this is all going to come to a head in, just 8 months from now when people who have said over and over again, every poll you look at, right? What is top of mind? It's the high cost of living. What do people want? Solutions to make their lives more affordable. There's very little receipts that Republicans are going to be able to bring that show that they're doing that. And that's real. And organizations like mine are going to make sure that people understand like who has your back and who doesn't on the things that make your life easier, like and able to thrive and to do basic things like take care of a parent, right? Like at the end of their lives without worrying about your paycheck, or like all of us, right? To find childcare so you can go to work and contribute to this society.
It feels like once you get to that level, there's such a disconnect because it's important to point out voters versus politicians, right? And you talk to Republicans, and there are so many people that are craving this, that need this. And then, like, once it gets to the upper echelons of something, I think that it's lost somewhere there. Like when Trump, was it after a hurricane that he was just like throwing paper towels into a crowd, being like, here you go.
Dry up. Oh, gosh.
Yeah. During his first term, it's just that, like, that disconnect is there. And I, like Sarah said, wish that there were people that were working on the ground in these states and that are elected by the same people who elect the federal politicians that could carry up their values and carry up that process. So we're not in this situation. And it just sucks that we're so polarized and that it's become such a spectacle that, like, being extreme is what gets you attention. And doing something like passing affordable childcare and actually making a huge difference in somebody's life is just like, oh, that's nice. That actually helps people, but it hasn't brought me to the forefront and center. And just sucks that that's where we are.
Yeah. I mean, part of what the Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy does outside of elections is we have year-round programs in places across the country where we are in real time are educating constituents about what their members of Congress are doing. And so we're like, one of the states that we have this work in is Pennsylvania. And we've been in these 3 congressional districts in Pennsylvania. And every time they take a vote, like these members of Congress take a vote that cuts Medicaid, that cuts SNAP, that cuts Head Start, right? Like to talk about childcare, that don't extend the ACA, right? Like the tax credits, the things that make healthcare affordable for people. We tell their constituents. We tell them like at events. We tell them it through ads, right? Like on TV and on their phones. We just make sure that that disconnect between like who you thought you were electing and what they're doing in DC is bridged. And that to me is like really, important, is just getting people engaged with the person that is supposed to be representing them in Washington, D.C. and reminding them over and over again, like why they were sent there. Republicans ran in 24 on, they didn't call it affordability then, right? Like, but they ran on a platform of lowering costs. And, based on the things I just said, like they have done the opposite, of that. And it's really important to make sure that people are aware of that.
Do you have any predictions for 2026?
Well, it's going to be the affordability election. And I feel like, our goal, the Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy's goal there is to break that Republican trifecta so we can stop a lot of these really bad policies in their tracks. And we're feeling like there's a lot of work to be done to get there, to make sure that people are educated about what where the different candidates stand. But I think there's a really good opportunity to break that trifecta and, to maybe, win in both help people who support lowering caregiving, which, as we talked about, are Democrats, like lowering the cost of caregiving, to help them win. And I'm feeling very optimistic.
Great. We are too. We are too.
It's hard to say that out loud, right? Like, I'm feeling optimistic, fingers and toes. Yeah.
It's hard every day when you're just like getting bombarded with the chaotic news cycle, but we have to have a little hope or it would be really challenging
Totally.
to continue this work. So going into our last segment, this is one of our fun ones. It's called DGAF, Don't Give a Fuck.
Okay.
We do this segment on the show and it's kind of self-explanatory, but we want you to bring more of like an unfiltered, off-the-clock version of yourself. So no policy language required.
Okay.
You could do short answers, long answers, anecdotes, whatever makes the most sense. So are you ready?
I am ready, Sarah.
Okay, so this one, it could be motherhood, politics, whatever you choose, whatever comes to mind first. So what do you not give a fuck about in 2026?
Okay, this is hard. I give a fuck about everything. It's part of my problem. It's very hard. I give a fuck about everything. From a non-political perspective, though, I am trying to give less of a fuck about an unclean house. I have a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old, and my mother is laughing somewhere because their rooms are so messy, and I am trying not to give a fuck about that anymore because I give a fuck about so much that's happening everywhere else. How's that for an answer?
That's great. That's great. We talk a lot about that, whether it's like dishes in the sink, laundry piled up. Okay, so as a mom, not as an executive director, like what part of the system makes you want to scream?
Oh God, it's like school, right? Like, how does school end at 3:00? But like my workday does not end at 3:00. Why are parent-teacher conferences in the middle of the day? Why? We're like not that far, fingers crossed, from June, where the weather's going to be warmer, and that means school's going to end. Why is there something every single day of the week during working hours in June to celebrate the end of school? And then I would say, in addition to that, and I'm sure you've talked about this also, why am I the only person that is called from school every time that someone needs to pick up my kids? Stop just heaping all of this on moms. Come on.
Okay, one thing to note on that is I kind of lost it on my husband this morning because I'm always the one that gets the text message. I'm always the one that gets the phone call. I was in Denver for meetings on Monday. I'm getting notifications on my phone while I am presenting to a group of people. And I'm like, go call my husband. You're not getting a hold of me right now. I'm not answering. Go call my husband. I have told them so many times.
They're not going to.
It's so nuts. Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry for that anecdote, but that's exactly why we love this segment. Okay, so for moms or parents, but because you're a mom, you probably have this perspective, who are just totally exhausted by motherhood, by the news, what do you say to them?
First of all, I feel you. I try to think of it in a generational arc, which gives me a little bit of strength and the fortitude to keep going on. I was really lucky to have my grandmother in my life until just a couple of years ago, and she had a child. She had my aunt very young. She was 18. I was 38 when I had my first child. I'm living the life that she wanted for herself, right? That she wasn't able to have. And we talked a lot about what it meant to be, I think we were 50 years apart, almost to the, basically almost to the day. And when I think about all of the changes that were achieved over the course of her lifetime, and I think of all of the work that still needs to be done, I just really think about my daughter in that chain. And that gives me the strength to just keep going and advocating in my personal life and in my professional life, that I want my daughter and I to have that same conversation and to see all of the changes that have happened since my grandmother's lifetime, my lifetime, and then Abigail's.
That's amazing. As we kind of wrap up this conversation, and first of all, thank you so much for spending your time with us.
It was a pleasure.
As we've learned, time is very precious for this conversation, and we appreciate you spending it with us. So, what is one thing that every mom or listener can do this week that would move the needle? That's not just like, although it's important to call your senators, that's not just call your senators, call your representatives. What's just something to do?
So if people, I think everyone, like I said at the beginning, and I'm like this too. Like I never think to call my senator when I'm having a childcare crisis. I remember once being like on a panel and my babysitter like called in sick and I was in DC, right? And I live in New York and I was like, holy shit, like what am I supposed to do? And I was, scrambling with my mother-in-law, my father, right? Like my sister, like how can I fill that gap? And I don't think that like what I should have done, as I said, is like call Chuck Schumer or Kristen Gillibrand and be like, fix this. But if what you took away from today is that there should be fixes in DC and there should be fixes for everyone, right? Like regardless of where they live. When you're talking to your friends or you're talking to your parents about the struggle, because you will, like when you're asking them for help to like fill in the gap, which you will, because you can't do this by yourself, it's impossible. I would just pepper in there, right? Like, and you know what would solve this? It would be if we would actually get like legislation passed in Washington, D.C. that would make sure that like childcare is more affordable and it's more available. Just having that be part of the conversation that like that there are solutions to this. There are people that are supporting them, and that it's important to think about when you're voting, like who is on your side and who isn't. And so we all have those conversations. We all go to mom drinks. Apparently I'm baking cookies for the moms while they're, while they're doing that. And just layering in that, like, we should not have to solve this by ourselves. Like, everyone is facing the same thing. There should be collective solutions. I think that, like, weave that into the conversations you're already having. That's how we get that public demand, which is how we're going to make this a political reality the next time we're in a spot like we were a few years ago. We're not going to let this get cut.
Where can people find the campaign for a family-friendly economy and plug in?
So we've got a website, familyfriendlyeconomy.org. There you can see all of the programs that we're running. You can see where we stand on candidates. That's a great place for people to go. You can also click on a part of our website that will take you to a program that we have called Caregivers, where if you're looking to donate to candidates and you want it to come through as a person that cares about care, who cares about childcare, that's a good way to think about your political giving if that's something that you're interested in.
That's fantastic. We'll make sure to hyperlink those links and put it in our social media and our YouTube and all of the places. So thank you, Sondra, so much. It's been such an interesting and therapeutic conversation, at least for me. I love complaining about childcare issues.
But we're going to turn that into action and impacts. Yes.
We are. So thank you for being here, for everything you do. For those listeners who are just tuning in for the first time, please consider leaving a rating and review. Follow us on our Instagram, our Substack, our YouTube channels. We are kind of dabbling in TikTok, but we keep getting shadow banned for political content. So we aren't talking about Epstein files anymore, apparently. So you can follow us at Monarchy Podcast at all of those places. And thank you for listening. And Sondra, we will see you out there on the field, hopefully. And thank you again for all that you're doing. It's so important.
Thank you both for giving me this opportunity to talk to you and learn more about both of you as well.
Great. Thank you.
Of course. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.